we're gonna end out on a high note, and I think I'm trying to think of a good name to call this. We'll call this Memories of the Spider.
Tales from the Spider Web.
Tales from the Spider Web. I like that. I'm gonna go with that one. So we'll go order of events. So since yours was at UFC 101 and mine was at 126, I'll let you go first. So your favorite live Anderson Silva event.
So I guess there's three parts of this. Number one, the event was actually really boring. There was only one finish. It was Johnny Hendricks fighting Amir Sadali. He knocked him out in like a minute. And then it was a bunch of decisions leading up to the Anderson Silva fight. The crowd got very restless. This is a drunk Philadelphia crowd. They were nuts. The biggest fight I've ever seen at a sporting event happened right below me on the floor. The entire floor started fighting each other. If you go back and watch the broadcast, you'll hear Joe Rogan actually mention, he goes, there's 17,000 people here. Not one of them is watching the fight in the cage. But anyway, getting to the Anderson Silva fight, that was the Forrest Griffin fight. The one where Anderson Silva had a couple of bad performances in a row and everyone was kind of down on him. He got booed a lot coming out to the cage that night. And Anderson Silva came out there and, he was doing the same thing for the first minute. And then he claps it up and he starts getting in Forrest Griffin's face, completely clowns on one of the worst things you see. Forrest Griffin ran out of the cage. He will never recover from that image of him running out there. Junior Seau was in his corner for some weird reason. I have no idea why, but that was just a crazy good event. I'll never forget that moment. And I love being able to say that I saw one of the greatest of all time and arguably his best performance. What did you say?
What I will say in terms of that, one thing I will give to Forrest Griffin is in his very next fight, he came out to I get knocked down by Chumbawamba and touche to have the foresight on that one. That one was good. And also would not be the last time that he's run out of the cage. He's done it a few times.
Well, he should have came out the flock of seagulls, ran away, but that's just my opinion.
That would have been perfect. So now mine this is my first, on top of the fact that this happened, and I'll get into that. This was my first ever live UFC event, period. So I was in the UFC for a long time, just watching live, and my father-in-law, or like just father-in-law, like recently married at that point, said, okay, I know you're super into this. We've watched it with you a number of times. We are too, him and my brother-in-law. Just like, pick an event. We'll go wherever in the States, as long as it's in the States. And if you list like whoever has the most fighters you want to see, we'll go to that one. So we're literally at dinner and I'm on my phone back on my Nextel BlackBerry, scrolling up and down, looking on I think the SureDog app or something like that, seeing, or maybe MMA Junkie, either way, trying to see like who all my favorite fighters were on. Well, one of my longtime favorite fighters is Rich Franklin, Forrest Griffin. I love this guy from the WC. His name was Cowboy Cerrone. He was debuting that night.
I heard of him.
Yeah, I liked Chad Mendes also. He was debuting. There's a lot of that was the WC transfer over, and then I'm looking up higher and I love Vitor Belfort. I was just starting to watch the older UFCs and I was all in on Vitor Belfort. I'm like, and I wasn't super sold on Anderson at that point because obviously he had the bad performances and he had the great one with Forrest Griffin, and then he had to come back to I think the Damian Maia one was at 112 after that, the one in Abu Dhabi where he just like run around, did nothing. Well, either way. So I'm watching the countdowns, so into this. So this UFC 126, Mandalay Bay. I go there. That was actually when John Jones beat Ryan Bader also after hopping over him, choking him out, and then getting the title shot. So I'm so hyped for this fight, right? And I actually, it was the first time betting too. Went to the sports book. I had money on Vitor Belfort in this fight. And this was huge. This was like old school Pride. I mean, they both fought in Pride, but you know what I mean. The old school UFC Vitor Belfort fame, Brazil versus Anderson Silva. And like you're watching the fight, and what no one remembers from that fight is you have Vitor Belfort actually like almost like half taking Anderson down and like pretty much doing a Dan Henderson jump on him with the fist, but it literally just lands next to his head, but you can hear the thud and just being like, oh, it was so close. Oh, this is like, it was so electric. And then like literally watching and then watching and then watching. And then the foot just flicked up and then he just melted. And it was the most, like, it was just dead sounds for a second. And then a lot of taken off Vitor Belfort Roca shirts that just kind of got left on the ground neatly and then walked away. And I guess I've relived that so many times because for the longest time, that's also how they ended the Baba O'Reilly thing. If you go to live events for the longest time. So talk about a first live card that was sold after that point. And like, I'm not saying I'm a huge Anderson Silva mark, but for a little bit I was. And that definitely started that one. And man, that was a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Those are probably his two most iconic knockouts. Like, which other ones does he have? Like of like the iconic, like crazy.
I mean, he has the Stephan Bonner one, but I mean that was outclassed.
It's also Stephan Bonner.
Yeah, there was the Dan Henderson submission.
Yeah,
I guess. Honestly, the submission for Chael, but that was because he was losing like the entire time. But and I guess the knee in the rematch to Chael. But really, those two, the ones you and I are talking about, are the two biggest ones. The reason I really wanted to do this, we had just talked about pound for pound, and now we have Anderson Silva retiring too. And I had seen someone on Twitter talk about like they don't understand why like the UFC 126 knockout was a big thing. And I'm like, at the time it was huge. Like, you're saying this because like you've seen front kick finishes before. Because like not long after this at the 129, you had the Machida versus Couture front kick. You've had more since. This was the first. People didn't think it happened, and then Steven Seagal said he taught it to him. So.
But it's kind of
everybody wins in that regard.
Well, no, it's anytime somebody sees something for the second time, it's less impressive. Like, there's a fighter on tonight's card. I think it was Sean Strickland who was wheel kicked like 2 years ago. It was a really bad spinning. Like it might have been straight. It might have been somebody else. I can't remember who. But and the point is, like when Barboza does it though, like that, you're gonna remember that one forever. But anybody who ever does it after that, it's just kind of like, whatever. Anderson Silva was a game changer. He was a magician. He was the first guy that I remember watching and just going like, he's in the Matrix. He's the only guy that knows what he's doing. And I wasn't around for the Hoist Gracie, era, but even like the best submissions aren't as cool to watch, I don't think, as the best knockouts. So for me, Anderson Silva, all-time legend. I got to see one of his greatest things in person. Now I get to watch him retire. I remember we knew who he was. My brother and I, we used to watch MMA together back in the day. And we knew who he was when he came into the UFC. And we're sitting here watching the pre-fight tapes roll with Chris Lieben saying like, oh, I'm gonna humble this guy. I'm going to send him back to Japan. And we're on the couch giggling like, all right, man, good luck with that. Good luck. Have fun. And then he takes his head off with that 4-punch combination where Chris Lieben was just frozen in time. Fantastic. Anyway, just, hats off to one of the greatest ever. Glad we got to watch him.